What the Western media and Western taught history will not tell you about North Korea. What are the truths about North Korea and why does the US keeps trying to destroy them? Let's listen to Joti Brar explain some truth about North Korea from a discussion she had with Garland Nixon about the decay of Western colonialism and imperialism.
You've been doing some work on the situation on the Korean Peninsula, and one thing I find that in the U.S. empire, people are completely bamboozled. They have no understanding whatsoever, and they get the usual boogeyman treatment. Oh, the leader of country X is a madman. He's insane. He's completely crazy. To me, I compare that to, I don't know if you've ever seen, it's the guy named Raoul Peck, I believe, Exterminate the Brutes, wherein that was a movie. He's a Haitian who made this documentary. It's about how during the former colonialist times, which are different from the present colonial times, how I don't know, but that's what I'm told. But that basically the people in a given country, they want to take their stuff, they want to rob the country, so they'd say they're savages, they're brutes, they're inhuman, and that's the excuse that's used to pillage and loot a given country. Today, Russia is run by a madman. North Korea is run by an insane madman. Everyone in the given country that is targeted for theft is a madman. And if you could talk a bit about the Korean Peninsula, what people need to know about what's going on there, the anti-imperialist work that you're doing there, and because I'll say this, that's an area where a lot of people throughout Europe and North America know nothing about. What do we need to know about what's going on in the Korean Peninsula and North Korea?
I guess the first thing to understand is that the Korean people were cheated of their victory at the end of World War II. Oh.
I'm hearing you. You're loud and clear.
Okay, sorry, that was
good.
So the Korean people had been occupied by Japanese imperialism from 1910. They fought a very long and hard liberation struggle against Japanese occupation, which they won. So in 1945, they had beaten their colonialists. They were on the winning side of World War II, people. There's number one headline. Korea was on the winning side of World War II. And then there was an agreement made that to kind of stabilize, it was happening all over East Asia, to stabilize the situation. The Soviets would come into the north and the US would come into the south to help make sure that the Japanese were kind of got rid of, and Korea would be free to chart its own future. The Soviets lived up to their part of that bargain. They made no interference whatsoever in local affairs, and they left on schedule. The US imperialists basically refused to leave. They created a puppet proxy regime in the south, a huge machinery of anti-communist repression, because the national liberation struggle in Korea had been led by a brilliant revolutionary called Kim Il-sung. And so the likelihood was that the sovereign united Korea that was emerging in 1945 was going to be a socialist country. It was certainly going to be aligned with the new China, because its leaders, while they had been in exile, they had spent time in China, they had helped fight in the Chinese Revolution, and there was a very strong blood brother relationship between Mao's revolutionaries in China and Kim Il-sung's revolutionaries in North Korea. And of course, they had very strong friendly links with the USSR. Now, if you, number two thing everybody should do is just look at the map. Look at where Korea is. Look at, if you see the world the way the imperialists see it, like it's your chessboard, and like you need your pieces in these places to control this, this, and this, then you understand the significance of the Korean Peninsula as far as the imperialists are concerned, and their absolute fear of having an unbroken line of a socialist camp that included all of Korea jutting out on a peninsula between China on the one side and the Soviet Union, as it was then, on the other, and today is Russia. So keeping their base on the southern part of Korea was extremely important to imperialist interest, to be able to threaten the Soviet Union, to be able to threaten emerging new people's China, and to be able to keep control over that whole area, including, it's next to Japan also, right? And, the whole of the South China Sea and the East, I forget what they call it, but anyway, that part of the Pacific, right? So the Americans had no intention of leaving. They set up a proxy regime. They made a colony. South Korea is not the Republic of Korea. It is not an independent state. It's like Ukraine, only it's been going on for nearly 80 years. It's a proxy puppet, very often fascistic. Sometimes it looks a bit more democratic than other times, depending on what the needs of the USA and the pressure from its own population, require. But essentially, whether it looks more democratic or more fascistic at the moment, its government is always under orders and control of the USA. Its army is completely subordinated to the US Army. The biggest bases of the US military outside of the USA are in South Korea. South Korea's capital, Pyongyang, is built practically on a base. They have the South Korean War Museum is a converted US military base where they celebrate the glories of what they call the alliance, right? Which is basically their domination, their subjugation by US imperialism. Underneath that converted base, which is now a glorification of US imperialist domination of Korea, there are still toxic materials that the USA was using during the Korean War and never disposed of. They just buried them underneath that base and left. They're still there in the middle of Pyongyang. So this is the way. And in fact, the South Korean people are taxed and forced to pay a fortune to maintain the machinery of US colonial occupation in their country. Right. So these are kind of basic things we should understand. When North Korea is presented as isolated, that is a projection of the USA's desire, the imperialist desire to isolate and strangle the socialist North Korea, right? They are terrified of North Korea's ability to succeed. They've done everything in their power to crush it economically and to cut it off from being able to trade normally with other countries and get the resources it might need that it can't produce itself. Now, remember, the South was the richest part of the country, had the best farmland. The North, a big part of it is mountains. Not all of it, but a big part of it. So, it already had disadvantages from being cut off from the rest of its country, trying to make a go of an independent economy in half of its territory, half of which is quite mountainous. Nevertheless, using a planned economy, despite everything that's been hurled at them, they have been able to develop their economy. Something else people should understand, when the USA launched its war of aggression against the North, against the socialist DPRK, 3 years, they bombed that place into the ground. The US generals bragged that it wouldn't rise again for 1,000 years. They were wrong. It rose again very quickly. Have a look at some pictures of modern Pyongyang. Have a look at some pictures of modern North Korean farms and scientific facilities. The fact that they've been able to develop a scientific and educational infrastructure on the back of which they can produce the most high-tech weaponry in the world. So you can't produce weapons without a whole load of other infrastructure. It's not like there's weapons plus starving people. That isn't possible in a self-contained economy, to have like a high-tech weapons program and a bunch of people who have nothing. You need a whole establishment of education, of scientific research and endeavor. You need a whole load of other types of industry that can support your weapons manufacture at a high end. So they're not only making weapons, they're making all kinds of things, right? And they're developing all kinds of science, and that relies on having a strong educational system. So what they also have is things like free housing, right? What they don't have is unemployment, inequality, poverty. There's no beggars on the streets in North Korea, right? We're not told any of these things. When they say the leader's mad, what they mean is the leader won't do as he's told. That's it. That's the only thing you need to decode, right? That's what they mean. The North Koreans are very happy with their leadership because it has kept their socialism, which has delivered so many advantages to them, alive despite everything that's been thrown at them. Have they been forced to be more insular than they would like? Yes, they have, but that wasn't their choice. It's not because they are insular.
Thanks for watching the video, and please consider liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much.